We played our asses off.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by proflowers.com. Use the promo code LOFB to get the 100 Blooms for Mum bouquet and a free vase for just $19.99. My name is Josh Lloyd and you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. The same for Instagram, and Facebook is facebook.com/redrockbasketball. And of course, all of my projection work and article writing work is over at basketballmonster.com. So go and check that out over there. If you're looking for a place to read some stuff and some DFS projections, we've got that all over at Basketball Monster. Well, the first round of the NBA playoffs are done. We're going to talk about the two games on Sunday. We're going to look ahead and preview Monday's action. So,
let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. We will start with the perfect DFS lineups from Sunday. We'll start on FanDuel, where Johnny Wall and Isaiah Thomas formed the point guard combination. Wall had 46.8 and Isaiah Thomas had 47.7. Paying up for point guards always seems to be a good way to go throughout these playoffs. At shooting guard, it was the two Bradleys, Brattles-Beal at 35.2 and Avery Brattles at 37. The small forwards, Jay Crowder, bounced back with 34.7. Otto Porter had 34.7 in a really large minutes load for Porter due to the Markieff Morris injury. At power forward, Derek Favors, due to Rudy Gobert's fouling issues, he had 36.7, and Boris Diaw had 16.2, and Marcin Gortat, again a beneficiary of the Jan Mahinmi and Markieff Morris absences, he had 41.6 for a total of 330.6, and that cost $59,900. On DraftKings, Isaiah Thomas 51.25, Avery Bradley 39.25. Jay Crowder had 38, Favors had 38.75, Al Horford had a big night with 50.25, Jamal Crawford 29.5, Otto Porter 37.25, and DeAndre Jordan 46 for a total of 330.25, and that cost $49,200. All right, now, as you guys know, or maybe you don't know, but Mother's Day is coming up. Why don't you make sure that you get your mum something really special for Mother's Day? And for that reason, I'm here to help you, because the guys over at ProFlowers have got a great deal for all listeners to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast. You know that you probably underappreciate your mum, not just your mum, any other mother in your life, your grandma, your wife, your partner, whoever it is. Getting something to recognize the contributions your mum makes to you in your life is always important. That's what we should do it every day, but on Mother's Day it's always a good idea to go that extra step and put that extra thought into what you're doing. So ProFlowers is here for you guys to make that not only easy, but you get to get your mum a great present, and you get to save yourself a little bit of extra money, and you can use that extra money that you save to buy her another present as well. So it's double karma for you when you're getting that stuff for your mum. When you go onto proflowers.com, there is the 100 Blooms for Mum bouquet from ProFlowers, and it will make a huge impression for your mum. 100 blooms, think about that. It comes with a free glass vase, or as you guys in the States would call it, a vase. I'll call it a vase because that's what I call it. That's the way I speak. So you get a free glass vase for just $19.99 plus shipping and handling. 100 Blooms bouquet plus that free glass vase, and if you want to upgrade, you can get a premium vase and gourmet chocolates for just $10 extra. Now that's not much to spend on your mum, really, and you're going to make a huge impression. And really, which female doesn't like flowers? But let's be honest, guys, you might not say that you like flowers. If there's flowers around a house, they look pretty good. Bit of color, bit of smell. It doesn't mean that you're any less of a man to say, you know what, I don't mind flowers. Flowers in a house, they look good. So you can go ahead and order this 100 Blooms for Mum bouquet from ProFlowers. Get yourself that vase. Hey, even upgrade it to the premium package as well and get those chocolates as well. Choose whatever delivery date you want for the flowers. They're guaranteed to arrive fresh and beautiful and stay that way for at least 7 days, or you get your money back. Can't do much better than that, can you? The only way to get the 100 Blooms for Mum bouquet with that free glass vase starting at $19.99 is to visit proflowers.com. On the top right-hand corner of the screen, there's a microphone. Click on that and enter my promo code LOFB to get yourself this great deal. That's proflowers.com and use that code LOFB when you click on the microphone. This stunning bouquet sells out fast, so make sure you get your order in and don't disappoint your mum. All right, that is they're a new sponsor, ProFlower, so make sure, again, Mother's Day, it's a great time of the year. Go ahead and support them. Yeah, and it's not like you're not getting something out of it. You're getting something great out of it. A great present, a great price, a great company. Go and support proflowers.com because they're supporting me, and in I guess moving it forward, they're supporting you because they enable this podcast to come out. And if you're listening, I assume you like it, unless you're one of those people who hate listens to things. And if so, welcome anyway. Let's talk about Sunday's games. The first one was the first round 2 contest, and that was between the Wizards and the Celtics. The Celtics go up 1-0, a very high scoring affair, 123-111. When we talked about it yesterday, we mentioned that this was the higher over-under. It was like a 25-point difference between the two games, and it definitely lived up to that expectation. Stephen, now I've got a question here from Stephen. Now, Stephen, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. Is it Jerd or Yerd? Either one. He says, how many NBA jerseys do you own? I get that question a lot. You know what? I probably should count it. I reckon the number's probably sitting at 70 at the moment. I've got at least 2 for every team. I've got I've got a LeBron James high school jersey. I've got a Ben Simmons college. I've got a Larry Bird college jersey. And I've got 3 jerseys for some teams as well. So it'd be close to 70, Stephen. So that's getting that question out there, which gets asked all the time. And I'm sure once free agency trades and the new rookie class comes in, there'll be a few more coming my way also. All right, let's get back to this game now. I don't think the Wizards should be totally discouraged from this performance. Yes, they lost by 12. It's game 1. It's in Boston. And one thing we can say, though, if you're a Boston fan, is the malaise that took over this team in games 1 and 2 against Chicago, that's not there anymore. They're playing like they should as a 1 seed, and they have for the past 5 games. Still, they have their concerns, but they are much more locked in and much more focused. And you have to think that those first 2 games were the China Thomas death was a real factor in the sluggishness, in the malaise that was over the whole team, and that's totally understandable. But the Wizards shouldn't be downhearted by this. They've still got their games back in Washington. They need to steal one of these games in Boston. I think it's still going to be a good series. Johnny Wall, he was at his best, 24 and 16, 2 blocks and a 3, another solid performance there. But Otto Porter, this is what I like to see from Otto, 16 and 11 in 41 minutes with 2 steals. Still only had a pretty small usage percentage of 11%, which just continues to baffle me. But a big game there from Otto. He did get the extra minutes because Markieff Morris only lasted 11. So we had more Otto, we had more Kelly Oubre playing the 3 and the 4, and also with Markieff Morris, he was out, but Jan Mahinmi out as well, so they had to go smaller, which is something the Celtics don't mind doing too, so that played into their hands there also. Bradley's Beal was good again, 27 and with 4 assists and 4 triples, another good night from him. While Kelly Oubre got the extra run with the injuries to Morris and Mahinmi, he played 26 and had 12 points with 2 blocks and 2 triples. That Oubre will be someone to watch if we have Mahinmi and Morris out for game, and it does look like there's going to be a real concern for Morris for game 2, so we might see some extra value for Oubre pop up on Tuesday. Bogdanovic scored 10 in his 19 minutes, and Brandon Jennings was yuck. He had 0 points in 13. Onto the Celtics side of things, Al Horford, huge night from Horford, and again, like the first 2 games for Boston against Chicago, he was poor, and he was getting crucified. Yeah, you pay this money, the max contract, can't grab a rebound, blah, blah, blah. Al Horford can't do anything in the playoffs. Cool. I hope all that bullshit's gone, because that really, really bothers me, that sort of talk. It shits me. You're going to hear it all about Chris Paul now, and it just bothers me to absolutely no end, that it just shits me to tears. Horford's been great in the next 5 games and was fantastic here. 21, 9, and 10. His passing has been absolutely superb this season, really, really taking it to it. Look, he's taking it to a Marc Gasol, Pau Gasol, maybe not Nikola Jokic, but pretty bloody close to Marcus Cousins in terms of being a center who can facilitate. If you would have said this about Al Horford, as you said 3 years ago about Al Horford, Horford's going to come out and dish 5 assists a game and hit 1.5 threes. People would have said, what are you talking about? This is Al Horford. He doesn't pass. He doesn't hit threes. He doesn't do any of this stuff. And now he comes out and is dropping 10 assists and hits a 3 a game comfortably. It's just been a massive transformation for Al Horford over these past couple of seasons. Jay Crowder had a massive night too, 24 and 6 with 6 triples. He had been not playing well against Chicago, but that's a good night there for him. While Isaiah Thomas was awesome as well, 33 with 9 assists and 5 triples, and Avery Bradley picking up his form from Game 6, had 18, 5 and 4 with 4 steals and 3 triples. So if those 4 guys fire, they're going to be a hard team to knock off. Marcus Smart played his 31, and again, very Marcus Smarty, only 6 points, but 3 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals, 3 blocks. This is just what he does, and he continues just to put up these numbers. They're never going to go and blow through the roof until he has one of those weird scoring nights, but he just consistently brings okay value. My boy Kelly Olynyk scored 12, and of course he only played 18 minutes because why wouldn't you just give your second best big man most of the minutes? And Amir Johnson got back into the rotation. He had 9 minutes for 1 block. Not saying he shouldn't be back in the rotation, but this was what I talked about yesterday, is that I didn't think that they'd run with big minutes for Gerald Green in this matchup, and I thought we'd see Amir back, and that's the case. Green started. He played 7 minutes and had a 7 trillion. Shout out to Tony Snell. And Amir got the extra of those minutes, played 9. Give him to Kelly. That's what you should be doing, Brad. And I know you won. That's fine. But we did see a change. Urepko got cut. Gerald Green got cut with their minutes. And we had Jaylen Brown and Amir Johnson back into the rotation. I'm not sure whether that's going to be something to stick moving forward. But it was a very big rotation that Stevens used in this game. And that's the thing that we do have to... And it's going to be something we look at when we talk about Toronto and Cleveland as well. Changes from series to series and how that goes about, with our minutes distributions. Utah and the Clippers, huge win for Utah here to finish off round 1 on the road in LA to get themselves through to the second round. That's massive for Utah. I've been big on Utah since the preseason. They've got killed by injuries this year and still got 48 wins. I'm glad they got through because I think they're going to give the Warriors a bigger challenge than what the Clippers would. I don't think that they're going to beat them, but I would have said Clippers in 4. No. I would have said the Warriors in 4 against the Clippers. I'm going to say now the Warriors in 6 against the Jazz. I reckon the Jazz can sneak a couple off them, and I reckon they can put a scare in them. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jazz go 2-1 up in this series. Well, that's maybe a little bit bold, but I think that the Warriors in 6. But it's huge for the Jazz, and it's not like that I don't hate any teams in the NBA at all. I don't have that tribal hatred of teams. But I do have a soft spot for the Jazz because I know people in the organization. I know David Locke, obviously. I've had Joe Ingles on this podcast. I've met Dante Exum. I have people that I know that work for the team, that play for the team, and I know other people closely who have people who are close in the team. So that's why I do have a soft spot for Utah. So I am wrapped for guys like Joe and Dante, and for David as well, who obviously is the head of the Locked On Podcast Network. Jingle and Joe was great. 36 minutes for Ingles, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 4 steals, and 1 block. He might be in a little bit of trouble against the Warriors, just athleticism-wise. KD, Clay, Steph, that might bother him a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be too bad. I think you're still going to see some pretty good performances out of Ingles. With Gobert really limited, he only played 13 minutes and fouled out in that time. He had 1 point and 4 boards, so a massive turd if you had Gobert in your DFS lineups. Hopefully if you played on FanDuel, you didn't anyway because his price was bananas. But that enabled Favors to play 30, and he had 17 and 11. Favors is still good. He still can produce when he gets the minutes. The thing is that they're using him strictly as a backup center. So if Gobert plays 35, you're going to get 14 minutes out of Favors, and that's going to make him a tough guy to use. But with Gobert going out of the game or not being able to play, Favors got those extra minutes, but don't think that this is going to be 30 a night moving forward for Derek. And we know what the Warriors can do to big men who might be a little lacking in athleticism, which Favors can be thanks to the knee problems. That could be a real issue. So I don't think we're going to see Favors Gobert front courts really running too much out there against the Warriors. I think that could be a recipe for disaster, so don't expect this to happen again for Derek. Gordo Hayward, 26, 8 and 3 in 42 minutes. A big night there, while Boris Diaw dropped in 10 points with 3 assists in his 17 minutes. Georgie Hill was also solid, 17, 4 and 5. Just think that the Pacers traded away George Hill to get Jeff Teague. Honestly, and Larry Bird's gone from Indiana now. Just a really terrible move. The moving on from Vogel to get Nate McMillan, terrible. The moving on from Hill to get Teague, terrible. Just disgustingly bad moves. They were at the time, and they look even worse now. the Jazz trading pick 12 for Teague. Not for Teague, for Hill. I guess, yeah, you have to say it's worked out. Hill's been a massive upgrade. Now, pick 12 ended up being Taurean Prince, who is obviously a lot younger than George Hill, but for what the Jazz needed, there was no point guards they were going to take at that spot. Completely fine move. Rocket Rodney Hood had 11 points in his 20 minutes, while Joe Johnson couldn't get everything going, as he, much like he was in game 6, where he struggled a bit, 10, 7, and 5 on 13 shots for Joe, and I touched on Rudy Gobert's struggles. Interestingly, Dante Exum played 8 minutes over Raul Neto, who only saw 2 minutes, and in Game 6 it was the other way around. Exum didn't play, and Neto got like 13 minutes, so it was a little bit of an interesting change there. For the Clippers, they're done now, but just a quick shout out to Paul Pierce, that's the end of Paul Pierce's NBA career. One might say that his NBA career ended before this season started, given how poor he was, but officially now he is done, and obviously he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's been a legend in the NBA, and his career, he's done it. You just just try not to remember his Clippers days when thinking back of Paul Pierce. Celtics days all the way. You can, maybe you want to look at a couple of moments in the Nets, a couple of moments for the Wizards, but honestly, when we're looking back at Paul Pierce, we're looking back at him as a Boston Celtic, not as this broken down, washed up version that we saw in LA. Chrissy Paul struggled, 13 points on 19 shots. Jamal Crawford jumped in with 20, but overall it wasn't a great performance from the Clippers, as they lost 104-91, and they are done. Now, there is going to be an inordinate amount of the Clippers are done, break up the Clippers. Blake's going to go, Chris Paul's going to go, trade DeAndre, Redick's going to go. There's going to be that all the time, and this might happen. But I don't, from the Clippers' point of view, why would you want to do it? I don't see any purpose in the Clippers breaking it up, because all it's going to mean is that for the next 5 years they're terrible. And yes, this team's not winning a championship, and that is the overall aim of things. But in the end, one team out of 30 wins a championship. It's not an easily obtainable goal. There are teams that have never won championships ever. So having a team that can challenge for top 4, top 5 sort of realm, it's not a bad thing to do. I think if anyone's leaving, it's Doc. That would be my guess. I don't think Paul is leaving. I don't think Blake is leaving. I don't think they should leave. And I don't think the Clippers should trade them. But I think Doc is going. I think he might be toast. And I think you might see Redick go. Maybe. But again, you lose Blake, you lose Paul, and you're rebuilding. It's taking... Look, Chris Paul is that good. Like, how are you finding this guy again? It's going to take 5, 6, 10 years. It's going to be Sacramento Kings-esque. Timberwolves. Like, this is how long it's going to take to rebuild this stuff. So I don't see that as being, I've got to blow up the Clippers. I just don't see... It's not as easy as blow them up, cool, we'll be good in 2 years. It's just not going to happen. If I was them, I would make some moves, clearly, but I wouldn't just be going, we're letting these guys walk because we want to blow it up. I don't think that's the best way to go about it. But that's just me. I am unfortunately not a GM at this point. Let's now transition ourselves fully into the second round and start talking about the games we've got coming up on Monday. There are 2 of them, the Toronto Raptors and the Cleveland Cavaliers is the first one. The Cavs are favored by 7 points and the total is 209. Both of these games with good totals, 209 for this one and 213.5 for the Rockets and the Spurs game. No real injury concerns in this one, unless you're worried that Kay Felder is out, which obviously you shouldn't be worried about that in the slightest. Let's start with the point guards. It's Kyrie. It's Kyle Lowry. Lowry is at 8,600. He was underwhelming in the series against the Bucks, and that's basically the bio descriptor for Kyle Lowry in the playoffs. Underwhelming. Now, he's got a good record against Kyrie and the Cavs, averaging 38 in the last 3 regular season contests that they've played each other. But this is the playoffs, and Lowry struggles in the playoffs, and LeBron can really put the Raps to the sword here. I don't hate Lowry at 8,600. I don't think that he is the best option, but he's definitely not a guy that I'm going out of my way to roster as a core player, and he's not a guy that I'm totally excluding from player pools and thinking this is not happening. But he did struggle against Milwaukee, and yes, the point guard defense of the Cavs is a lot easier than the point guard defense of the Bucks. So that's something that you can put into Lowry's favor. I would lean towards him more as a GPP sort of a player. As for Kyrie, he is at $9,000. Kyle Lowry's defense is no joke, and he struggles offensively in the playoffs. His defense is fine. I don't really like Kyrie here at 9,000 against Lowry. He averaged 33 points in the regular season against Lowry and the Raps, so I'm not a huge fan of Kyrie there. But Kyrie's at 77 on DraftKings and Lowry's at 8,000, so both of those guys actually do have appeal at those lower salaries. Lowry, especially at 8,000, I really like. Irving at 77, that's a big dip. That's $1,300 dip. And he has value there, and I would consider both of them GPPs on DraftKings, and I even would lean a little bit towards cash for both of those guys on DraftKings. I think you can feel a bit more confident about using them over there. Darren Williams at 2,500. There have been times, we saw it in that one game in round one, where they ran with him over Kyrie in the fourth. At 2,500, you can look at him as a tournament guy. But even if we remember that game, he barely did anything. He was on the court, yeah, but he didn't translate it into any fantasy points. So 2,500, you go, hey, I want a guy that can blow up and explode. And I'm just not sure that Darren Williams is going to be that player at 2,500. Sure, keep him in a GPP pool, but I'm not feeling strongly about it. Delon Wright at 1,900. Playing Delon Wright at the 3 against the Cavs, probably not going to work out great, especially if he's got LeBron just opposite him. I don't think that's going to be a good cover for him. But if Corey Joseph struggles, then Delon might be in play. I don't feel great about that. While Joseph comes at 2,600. He played minutes in the first round. Did nothing with him. Averaged 7 points in 15 minutes. And at 2,600, I reckon you can probably do better than Corey Joseph. He hasn't had a good record against the Cavs either. I'm not feeling strongly about him. Shooting guard, DeMar, 8,500. I really like DeRozan here at 8,500. I think that he was solid throughout that Bucks series, scoring a lot of points. He was getting 40 most nights, especially down the stretch of that series. And you feel like he's going to get another 40 here against Cleveland. So I'm okay with DeMar on both sites. Norm Powell's the interesting one here. FanDuel has bumped him to 4,300 considering how low he was, and he's at 54 on DraftKings. So 54 on DraftKings, I have no interest in that. At 4,300, it becomes a little bit more interesting, but like we talked about with Gerald Green in Boston and what's happening with Jerebko and Amir Johnson, I don't know that we're going to necessarily see Powell start against the Cavs, or does PJ Tucker come into that spot? Or do they start Corey Joseph? Or do they put Jonas Valanciunas back in? I don't think they will. But will Powell play? Will he play 30 minutes? We go back to last season. Powell was great against the Pacers. Powell played well against the Heat. Powell against the Cavs, DMP. 8 minutes. He just really limited. So that is going to be a concern. So no cash plays for Powell, I don't believe. Unless we hear, he's starting. And then even if he starts, I'd still be a little bit weird because it could be a Gerald Green start who played 7 minutes today. And I don't think Powell would play 7, but I think he might play 15 or 16. And that is the risk with him, especially with a $1,700 price rise. If you're still at 2,600, I'd say, you know what? That's definitely worth a look. But now that he's up to 43, it is taking a little bit off, especially in the last game. He played 31 minutes and scored 9 points against the Bucks. So, yeah, not quite as confident with him. J.R. Smith, 3,600, has done pretty much nothing throughout the playoffs. So I'm not, that's always just going to be a tournament only look. Or Iman Shumpert and Kyle Korver, I don't even think the upside's there for either of those guys. PJ Tucker is at 3,100. No, he'll play. He'll probably play bigger minutes. Doesn't turn into any points though. LeBron. And that's a pretty big price for LeBron on FanDuel. 12,800. He's at 11.4 on DraftKings, which is really good. I'm really happy with that. 12.8 is a lot. You've got Kawhi that's around. You've got Jim Harden who's around as well. I wouldn't have any issue with using LeBron. I'd probably look at him more as a tournament type of guy. Even though he does have some cash solidarity, it's not necessarily just about him. It's about, if you're spending 12.8 on him, the other guys that you're going to put in, how much confidence do you have in them attaining their floor? And if you can't find guys that, if you're going to be going, I'm taking a punt on Delon Wright at 1,900 and putting him next to LeBron, then that's not a good cash play. Even though LeBron might be a good cash play, but finding the other money there, because Delon could come out and not play a single minute, and you got a 0, and that's not the type of risk that you want in a cash game. So it's not that LeBron's not a cash game play. It's like, can you fit the other guys around him? And that is something you need to look at when you're trying to assemble your lineups. LeBron at 12.8, look, he can easily get 60. He's going to play 45 minutes. He's going to play big minutes. He's going to crush them. at 11-4 on DraftKings, that's real tough to go past. And that, to me, is a guy that I'd feel pretty comfortable that starting a lineup with. That's how good I think that price is for LeBron. You think he's getting 55 pretty much no matter what. And you got 60, 70 point upside. Really, really like that for LeBron over on DraftKings. Damari Carroll, I couldn't like him less as a player, as a fantasy asset. 3,400, not happening. John Bugby says, Jonas against Fry could be a disaster. Absolutely. That's why I don't think they'll go back to him as not even against Fry, against Kevin Love as well. I don't think that I don't think that Jonas against the Cavs is going to work out all that well. Despite how well Jonas can play offensively, I just think that defensively he's going to be a real liability. And I like Jonas, but there are some matchups which aren't good for him, and this is going to be one of them. Jeff just asked a question.
My name is Jeff.
I will get back to that in a sec, Jeff. I will talk about that question in a second. Power forwards. Serge Ibaka, 6,300 for Serge. He is the difference. Yeah, PJ Tucker's there, but the difference between these two teams from this year to last year, can he do anything? I think at 6,300, he's going to play minutes. He's going to play a lot at center. He's going to give Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson something to think about. I think at 6,300, Serge Ibaka is a fine player to use in a DFS lineup. At 66 on DraftKings, I'm probably less interested in Serge over there at that extra price, but I do think that at 63 on FanDuel, he has some pretty decent value. Kevin Love, 7,900. He has done well against the Raptors in the regular season, averaging over 40 a game. Didn't do that well against Indiana, but I think that he is going to be in a pretty good spot here against Toronto. I'd probably lean towards him more as a tournament type of guy, just because I just have there's a little element of risk with him, given the Ty Lue, I'm going to sit you the entire fourth quarter strategy, which he used in the playoffs a lot last year. But at 79 on FanDuel, 74 on DraftKings, Love is definitely not someone to completely avoid. Channing Frye is the other one that someone did mention before. He's at 4,200. Hey, if that was 2,200, I'd be all in on Channing Frye as a GPP option. At 4,400, I don't see that as being an upside play at all. The centers are pretty poor here. Tristan Thompson's at 55. Given the higher prices on FanDuel, you might even have to go with a guy like that at 5,500 and go, well, if he gets me 23, then I'm only a little bit behind it, and that's the best I can do. Well, Valanciunas at 49, I don't... Look, if you think that some miracle is going to happen and they're going to play him 30 minutes, then it's awesome value. I just don't think that miracle's got any chance of coming through, and I think that he's more likely to see under 20 than he is to see over 26 in terms of his playing time, given the way that that Casey tends to run things. So I don't really see much here to like about Jonas Valanciunas. Now, Jeff, your question. On the topic of blowing up the Clippers, CP3 player option. Does he stay? Do they give him a full max with a new CBA? He's got an early termination option on his contract, I believe. So I think that he will exercise that. He'll become a free agent. And yes, he will get the full max. They will give him the full max. If they don't, I think it's a bad decision on the Clippers' behalf. And I am 100% sure that I'm not 100% sure. I am 95% sure that yes, they will offer him the full max in LA, and I think he wants to stay. So I think it's pretty much a done deal that Paul will stay. Jeff says, I'm in Canada and I still can't justify the Raptors even sneaking 2 W's. #fire Casey. Yeah, I can't remember what I actually predicted for this series. I think I said Cavs in 5. To 2 wins, I reckon they might be in trouble to get 2 here. So I'm with you, Jeff. Unfortunately for the Toronto or Canada-based portion of the audience. Let's move on to the second game of the night, and that is the another second round matchup, of course, because that's where we're at. Houston and San Antonio. The Spurs are favored by 5.5, and the total is 213.5. The only injury news we have here is that Sammy Dekker is listed as probable, coming back from that fractured hand. I don't know that Dekker actually plays. Regardless of the hand, D'Antoni's pretty specific about what he wants to do. I run 8-man rotations. Cool. He's got an 8-man rotation. So who does Dekker replace? Does he replace Eric Gordon? Does he replace Lou Williams? Does he replace Nene? I think the answer to all those questions is no. Or do they come in and run a 9-man rotation and take 5 minutes off Gordon, 4 minutes off Lou, 3 minutes off Nene, and give Dekker 10? At this point, I don't think that Dekker plays, even though he's ready to go, or doesn't play meaningful minutes. He might play blowout time, but I'm not convinced that he becomes a a regular part of the rotation given the way that D'Antoni runs things. I think that the Spurs are going to be another team that runs things a little bit differently than they did in the first series. I think that putting David Lee out there to guard James Harden is an absolute disaster waiting to happen. Now, Lee did okay in the series, in regular season series, but I think that they go back to more Dwayne Dedmon, and I don't think that you can have a Lee Aldridge front court guarding a Harden Capella pick and roll, a Harden drive dish to Ryan Anderson. I don't think that you can do it. I think that you will get torched, and Pop's been fantastic defensively. But if you're running Powell, Aldridge, and Lee as your three front court guys, and you got Harden pick and rolls to deal with, it could get Enes Kanter-y. And that's the concern that I do have there. I don't know, but I think that is a change that could be coming. Now, Dedmon might not start. I think that he should. But I think it is something to watch, that change in thought process that might go down. At point guard, Tone Parker is at $5,000. Absolutely fantastic he was against Memphis. In fact, he averaged over 31 in the last 3 games of that series. Played 30-plus minutes. It was great. Patrick Beverley's a little bit of a different story in terms of defensively, and that could worry Parker. But at only $5,000, there aren't many point guards out there who could get 30 and could play 30 minutes. And Parker fits both of those criteria. So he does become an option to me more as a GPP guy, but definitely as a player that shouldn't be ignored. And that's a weird thing to say, given how piss poor Tone Parker was for the majority of this season. Pat Mills at $4,100. Tournament upside guy, but I don't really think that there's that much of an upside to consider him a must roster player. Whereas on the Rocket side of things, we've got Pat Beverley, who is at $5,400. Now that's another option. That's a big price drop of $500 for Beverley. He was all right at the end of that Oklahoma City series, really good in game 5 with 29 points. But struggled in the couple before that. But at $5,400, as I said with Parker, getting a starting point guard who plays 30 minutes, who can get 30 points, it's not that easy to do. So he's definitely someone who I think is in consideration. But what we did see at the end of that series against the Thunder is that Eric Gordon and Lou Williams started playing more minutes than Pat Beverley. So that is a thing to watch. And I think it is something we do need to pay some attention to. But if the Spurs start getting things going, then Beverley might have to play more minutes at the expense of the defenseless Gordon and Williams. So that's another way that could go. So I do like Bev. I think he's more probably a tournament type of a player. Shooting guards, Manu, 2,700. He hasn't had a great series. He's had one good game in the first round. I think you have to look at him as a tournament guy. Same with Danny Green, who's at 3,900. They're really lottery tickets. I would take Manu over Green because you're spending $1,200 less on him. And he does have that upside there, but I don't think that either of them are awesome plays. Manu's at 34 on DraftKings, so that's really, really unappealing to me for him over there at that sort of a salary. The shooting guards you want to pay attention to are Lou Williams and Eric Gordon. Lou averaged 30 over the last 3 games in the Thunder series. He's at 4,900. I think you're going to get decent minutes out of Lou. I feel pretty good about him. I would even actually consider him in cash, and that is really hard for me to say given how streaky he can become. And I would take him over Eric Gordon, no doubt. 4,900 for Lou, 5,000 for Eric. I would take Lou every day of the week there. On DraftKings, he's at 5,200 and Gordon's at 49, so that makes it a little bit more even, but I still would lean Lou Williams. He's been outproducing Gordon, and Gordon had a couple of decent games, but he did struggle in terms of putting up numbers through the majority of that series against the Thunder. Jim Harden, 12,800. Didn't have the best of times against the Thunder with Robertson, but the Spurs, I was going to say the Spurs don't have anyone the same as Robertson, and that is just my brain completely rewiring itself because they've got Kawhi. So that is a concern here for Harden. He did average over 50 points against them in the regular season. At 12.8, I would take the 12.8 on LeBron, then I would take it on Jim. Just matchup based, because again, Kawhi, Danny Green is a real issue, and he's done well. And Harden's a guy that can get 12, and if you've got under 12, you can get 50, 55 points pretty easily. And if you've got 12,000 around, then that's fine if you've already got LeBron in. But if I'm spending 12, I'm taking LeBron over Jim, just given the matchup stakes. Now, on DraftKings, Harden is at 10.9. And that really should make you think, you know what, at 10.9 for cash, I'm all right with that because I think he gets 50 pretty comfortably. I just don't think he gets 65. which is the FanDuel number that you want him to approach. At 10.9, that is hard to go past Jim at that sort of a salary. Speaking of hard to go past, Kawhi Leonard is at $11,000. Now, he has struggled in the past against Houston, but he's on fire in the playoffs. I don't really have too much concern about Kawhi. Yeah, I think he's a solid cash play. If you don't want to spend the 12-8 on LeBron or Harden, 11 for Kawhi is a really good way to set up a lineup. I like Kawhi a lot, obviously. He's at 10-2 on DraftKings, and I think you should feel pretty confident that he's getting you 5x on both sides. So he is a pretty much a core cash guy, I think, in my opinion. Trevor Ariza, 5,300. Bad series against the Thunder. Bad end to the season, really, for Ariza. Didn't play well at all, but has done well against San Antonio in the past. Because they get Kawhi onto Harden a bit, and it does open things up for Ariza, especially if they go a little bit smaller and play him at the 4. I think that Trevor at 5,300 is a GPP option, and a pretty strong GPP option at this point. The power forwards, LaMarcus Aldridge is at 7,200. I think this is a matchup where we can get interested in LaMarcus, especially on DraftKings at 6,500. I really like that. Yeah, he did struggle a bit against the Grizzlies, but his last game he had 34. He averaged 35 in the games against Houston during the season. At 6,500, I'm absolutely fine with using Aldridge at that price. I think it's a really good spot. And 72 for him on DraftKings, still, it's a bit high, but I really like it. Now, Dave Lee at 3,400. Tournaments only, I think, just because I reckon he's going to have the toasting of Harden really going to affect him, and whether Pop starts him or not, I'm not sure, but I do think that's a real concern for David Lee here. And Ryan Anderson, absolutely putrid in that last series. He's going to have a night where he hits 7 triples, and at 4,400, that could really work out for you, but he is no way that I want anything to do with Ryan Anderson in any form of cash game, double up, 50-50, head-to-head, nothing. In big GPPs, maybe, but he has been an abomination for the majority of that first series. At center, Dwayne Dedmon is at 2,100. This is a tournament option to go for, because I do think that he plays way more than he did against the Thunder because of the different team that they're playing. And so more than he played against the Grizzlies, because you're going up against James Harden, and he's a guy that can switch and guard on the perimeter and deal with the pick and roll situations that David Lee can't. So 2,100 for him to get 15 points, that's not hard, and that's a good number. So I like Dedmon as a real cheap option here for a GPP. Nene at 5,200, obviously had a great series against the Thunder. I think he's going to continue to play 24 minutes a night. And at 5,200, I feel all right about Nene. I think he's not a minimal upside guy, but a pretty solid floor, and that makes him a cash play at center. Pau Gasol has been dreadful throughout that Grizzlies series. Defensively, it could be an issue for him against Harden. I think at 4,800, he does then come into your calculations at that price, because it is a pretty cheap price, obviously, for Gasol, and 43 on DraftKings, but I would lean towards him as being a tournament sort of guy, while Clint Capella's at 6,000 on FanDuel. That's too high for Capella, especially given that they're going halvies in the minutes, but Capella's at 4,500 on DraftKings, and at 4,500, I'm in for that for Capella. I think that's cash worthy. I think it's maybe not tournament worthy, because I'm not sure his upside there is there with the minutes, but 4,500, totally fine. I think that's a really good cash play for Capella over on DraftKings. All right, we are done for today's podcast. Or actually, no, we're not, because a couple of questions have come in. Anton Lebedev, will Capella or Nene see more minutes? I think I just answered that, but I reckon you're going to see 24-24 or 23-25. So it's going to be basically even, and I think it might vary. If I had to go one way, I'd say Capella 25, but more likely 24. Actually, I might want to check what I've actually projected here. Actually, I've got the other way. Capella at 23, and where's Nene? And Nene at 24 with 1 minute of small ball with Anderson at center. So that's the way I go. So basically even. Joe Sherman, which game would you prefer to stack in a GPP, or would you split the two? The difference in total between the two games is not large enough to consider really leaning one way. You've got close spreads, 7 points and 5.5, so there's no blowout risk really. The total's 209 versus 230, and it's not like we've got a 215 versus a 190, which we had the other day. So I don't think that there's one game that you have to, like, this is the game that we absolutely have to stack. I think that an even distribution is probably going to be a better way to look, rather than going, I must focus on this game. I don't think anything really stands out like that on today's slate of games. Now we're done. Congratulations if your team made it through to round 2 of the playoffs. Mine didn't, but hey, it's the Bulls. They shouldn't have been in the playoffs anyway. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball, Basketball Monster at Bask Monster, and subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Google Play, on TuneIn, in Stitcher. Tell your friends, get them to subscribe as well, and leave a review. It is the most helpful way that you can to support the podcast. Also, Mother's Day, go to proflowers.com and use the promo code by clicking on the microphone in the top right corner and entering that code LOFB to get the 100 Blooms for Mum bouquet and a free vase for just $19.99. New sponsor, go and support them and show them that they made the right choice by supporting me. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Joe Ingles.